So we're going to talk about transformation today. So we're going to start with two things about transformations. Lenny, can you see?
Yeah.
Okay. You want to sit on this side so you can see? Okay, so transformations. So transformation, there's all different kinds. There's reflection, translations, there's vertical translation, horizontal translation, there's reflection, there's all the things. So we're going to talk about all the things combined as those transformations. So now what I want to do is follow two things though. First thing is you have to pay attention to the order operations. Okay, pay attention to order operation. Now the second thing I forgot. Don't remember. Do you guys remember what I write down first thing? I actually don't remember. I had to erase. Huh? Yeah, I should have taken a photo. But okay, so it should follow. I would think about it later. So you should follow the follow order operation. Okay, follow order operations. So what happened is on this side, we're going to talk about all the basic things in terms of math is. Quick sit up here. So in terms of math, that I usually tell people like general things you memorize, and those are the general things. Lenny, you need to put a computer one. Okay, so what's the general thing? If inside a parenthesis, so I'm gonna write down parenthesis the first time, but next time I'm gonna draw out a parenthesis. So parenthesis, inside a parenthesis, you move left and right. You move left and right. If it's after the parentheses, okay, so move left and right. So I need to add something on here, but it's gonna be opposite from sign. So opposite from sign. And if it's after parentheses, you move up and down. And the same sign. Any question about? Same sign. So it's a plus, it's going to go up. If it's a negative, it's going to go down. So before parentheses, it usually means multiplication. That usually means multiplication. Multiplications, and I call it multiplier. A multiplier. Or some people call it a stretch or compress. Okay.
The parentheses move up and down in what?
Up and down, same as sign, same sign, same sign. So if it's positive, it's going to go up. If it's negative, it's going to go down. So when you transform, you're going to follow those order operations. And the second thing, I want you to go focus on something else too, but I don't remember what the second thing I mentioned earlier. But we're going to talk about that. So usually I'll give you an f of x graph. For example, I'll give you that graph and I'll ask you to transform. Okay? So if I have this f of x, usually sometimes I have this plus c. Is that inside a parentheses?
Yeah.
Yeah, right? So it's inside of parentheses, it's addition and subtraction. This is moving up and down or left and right?
Left and right.
Left and right, and it's so moving left or right.
Left.
Right.
Because the plus C, right, is positive, so it's moving the opposite directions. So it's opposite from sign. So it's plus C is gonna go to left. So it's moving left. Does that make sense? So I have f of x minus C is what? Moving right, right? And that's pretty easy. And if I have f of x, now I'm gonna close a parenthesis here. I'm gonna say, let's say plus C. So now it's after the parentheses addition and subtraction, so it's going to what?
Up and down.
So it's moving up and down. So move up here. So this is up. Does that make sense? And then we probably can assume the next one, f of x minus c is equal to move down. Now they all have c units. So c unit, c unit. So depending on what the number is, you move how far down or how far up. Oh, I remember what's the second thing I want to focus now, but I'm gonna mention later. So in this part here, I mentioned now. So here is when you transform, you focus on a couple things: endpoints, turning point, and a y value. Okay, you focus on those things that when you transform a graph. So I remember my second thing. So sometimes you have a c that's in front of fx. So if a c in front of x, what do you think they do? Well, c is a constant. So a lot of people don't know what a c is. C is a number, an arbitrary number that I can give it to you. For example, 2. 6, 1,000. Doesn't matter what the value is. Nick, put your computer away. You'll be writing down stuff. Okay, so c times f of x. So I don't usually write down that times. I just write down c f of x. That c I'm gonna call it multiplier, but usually in textbook, if c is greater than 1, we're gonna call it vertical stretch. If c is between 1 and 0, we're going to call it vertical compress. Especially on SAT, it's going to call it vertical compress and stretch. They will say, what is a stretch factor? Then this is 2, then it's a stretch, they will say stretch factor 2 on SAT. Okay? So that's the things that you want to pay attention to, this part. Now for me, as far as helping on a graph wise, I don't really pay attention to those two. But for vocabulary, that on the SAT they say, oh yeah, there's a stretch factor, then you gotta look at the number in front of f of x. Adria, you can change your C if you want. You guys change your C if you need to change your C. Change it on this side. Adria, can you see?
Yeah.
Okay, so C is greater than 0 vertical stretch, 0 returns is vertical compress. Compress, usually stretch is going, so another thing that about stretching is like let's stretch like this, right? In Algebra 2 it didn't show it too much. But when it's stretched, it's not just this way. It's actually both directions. So if this is the midline, I'm stretching up and down simultaneously. And we're gonna talk about that. So instead of no lab, I'm gonna talk about, so you just know C is greater than 1 stretch, C is between 0 and 1 is going to be compressed. So for example, 1/2 is going to be compressed. Now for me, I recognize as a multiplier. And we're going to talk about what a multiplier is. Okay. One more thing is we're gonna talk about if it's a negative f of x. So if there's a negative sign, so here I just don't think of the same thing. Negative sign is gonna cause reflection. Actually, I'm gonna write in red because this is important. It's gonna cause reflection. Reflection across x-axis. Across the x-axis. Reflection across x-axis. Next one, this one is not common tested. I'm not worried about this one, so I will say not worry too much. At least not on my test, I'm not gonna test too much because this one gets kind of confusing. Is reflecting across y-axis. So those four are very easy to remember, right? And this one just to make sure it's multiplied, those two. And if it's a negative x and reflects on the y-axis, since I told you it's not that important, so then don't worry about too much. But I still, just in case in the future you want to know, what is it? The last one's hard. This is the absolute value of f of x. Okay? So what you're going to do is absolute value, that is going to be, there's no negative y value, so there was a key thing, so there's no negative y values. B-A-U-L-E, y values. So no negative y value. So that means all the graph below x-axis is going to reflect across, reflect upwards. Okay, so it's going to reflect upwards. Okay, so we're going to talk about all this. Question about this part. Okay, so most of you guys probably don't have a question because you don't know what a question look like. So we're going to show you what a question look like. So in a case that I will focus on certain things. So we're not doing that. Okay, so we're gonna switch this to here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is I'm gonna erase this middle part of you. Okay, so I'm going to give you some type of graph, and we're going to call this graph f of x. I missed a couple spots, but that's important. So this is very easy. Okay, so oh, great. So we're going to call this, we're going to build this function, and this function I'm going to say, because the other side is rows, x minus 2, no plus 2, and minus 2, between negative 4, less than x, less than 1. Okay, that looks good. check your decimal. Negative 1, 1, 2, 4. Okay. So here is, it looks like a square root, yes. So that's how you build a piecewise function. I just built a piecewise function look like this, and we're gonna even project mode so we're gonna zoom out a little bit to show you, and we're gonna take a screenshot. So now we're gonna say this graph is, we're gonna call this graph f of x. Okay, this is the graph f of x, and it's built up this way. I just built it, a function like this, and this is f of x graph. I should try to type in f of x here. So this is f of x. So what I'm going to do is I'm only focus on specific points. What do we focus on? Two things we focus on. Endpoints. So where are the endpoint? This one? This one. Where's the turning point? The point I turn, right? Right? So it's pretty easy. So we focus on the 4 point. All those things are based on this 4 point. So we say, hey, today I want you to graph f of x minus 2. What does that do?
Move it to the right too.
Move the what?
You move to the
Right? So, derecha? Derecha. See? Izquierda.
Izquierda.
Izquierda. Izquierda. Izquierda. No, forget it. Moving right. Right? Moving right 2 units. So what I'm going to do, you can get graphing paper if you need it. I'm going to take this point. I'm moving to the right 2 units. So I'm going to form a new point here. I'm going to take this point, going here. Does that make sense? Take this point, moving right 2 units. Take this point, moving right 2 units. And take this point, moving right 2 units. And then I connect the dots. It's pretty easy, right? It's in the square root moving left side. Moving right, because as I said, x minus 2. A lot of people don't know what's left and right. I'm no kidding. On the test, kind of make sure this is left, this is right. Because some people say it's moving left and they draw right. And the graph end up everything wrong was because they don't know left and right. Are we okay here? You take an end point and turning point and move accordingly. Now I want you to think about the next one. I will think about this one here, f of x plus 2 minus 1.
To the left 2 and up, down. Down 1 to the left.
So here's the thing though. Do I move left 2 first and down 1 second, or I move down 1 first? So everybody understand the first part. Do I need to go over the first part?
No.
Nicole? You understand? Or no? No, okay. So I take a turning point. This is minus 2, right? Inside the parenthesis. It's the opposite sign, so it's moving right.
Yeah.
So moving right, so I take this point, end point, I move right 2 units. I take this point, moving right 2 units. I take a turning point, moving right 2 units. I take an end point, moving right 2 units.
So technically for every unit, you're just moving right.
Right, and follow the direction of this.
Yeah.
Nicole, you understand? Okay, let's try the next one. We're gonna say, hey, let's graph f of x plus 2 minus 1. So we're gonna do 2 things at the same time, but you gotta make sure, follow order operation. What the order operation says?
Parentheses.
And then subtract, right? Parentheses and subtract. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna
To
move
the left.
left, right? Move left 2 units. And move down 1. So move left 2 units. This is the end point, moving left 2 units and down 1 point. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
I take this point, 2 units left, down 1. Is that too complicated? Same thing, 2, 1. 2, 1. 2, 1. And this is playing connect the dots.
Is that it?
That's it.
What's the like the thing though? Cause there's always something else.
The multiplication.
There's always something else. We haven't talked about it, but we're gonna go to the next one.
Oh, God.
So now we're gonna talk about what if I have a multiplier in the front?
Don't you?
No, you don't distribute.
You multiply.
You
It's stretch,
multiply
or
each
stretch or
point.
compress, right?
It says stretch or compress.
It's a stretch.
Stretch because it's greater than 1. But I said don't even look at a stretch and compress because on SAT you're gonna say stretch or compress. If it's a half, then it's gonna be compress factor. If it's stretch, if it's 2, then it's stretch factor. Then what is 2f of x? Well, I think about the multiplier. Multiplier just multiply something. So I'm gonna take this value. I'm gonna multiply the y value. See, f of x, what's the f of x? Essentially it's y, right? So we say what? Focus on endpoint, turning point, and y value. The y value is gonna be moving, it's gonna times by 2. What is 0 times 2? 0. Same point. Take this turning point again, is what? Positive 2 or negative 2? Y value is negative 2.
Yeah.
Multiply by 2. Taking this turning point, 1. Multiply by 2.
But how do you get the first point? The first point?
The first point is 0. The y value is 0. 0 times 2 is not doing anything, right?
So you do it to the y value?
You do it to the y value only because the x value doesn't matter in this case. You just take the value, multiply by 2, and you stretch them. Am I going too fast? Okay, you're gonna do the next one. Negative f of x. Actually, I'm gonna say negative half. Negative half. I'm gonna say negative half. Negative half.
Alright then, let's do this.
Negative half is what? Times. Is something is like divided by 2. Times half is something is divided by 2. But does that affect 0?
No, it's
No.
still 0.
Okay, so can you graph it out now? Kimo, you understand? Un poquito? Jing, I need to translate.
Oh, what happened?
You say you don't understand. You understand this, right?
Yeah, I got it.
So you would just divide every point by 2.
Or do you multiply?
And multiply by negative 1/2.
Oh.
What is 0 times 1/2?
0.
0.
It's the same.
What is negative 2 times 1/2? Negative 1/2. 1. And then this part is going to be what? Negative half.
Negative half.
No, aquí es cero.
Yeah,
Aquí es
got it right.
la línea. Porque tú estás multiplicando la línea. Yo te daría el doble de lo que sería.
Is this hard?
Pero tú estás multiplicando punto.
Okay, now we're going to try the combination. So now we learn right hook, left hook, and its combination.
Now we're going for the
Entonces
jab.
sería.
We're going for jabs. Okay, let's do jabs. Okay, so let's do negative 2 f of x minus 1 plus 2, plus 3.
Oh, God.
Porque tú también son
So would you start with the prime?
Porque tú lo que estás
Yes, you do.
multiplicando Y por el número.
You
Then
do.
you go up 1.
Go to the right one.
Y va de ahí hasta el punto de-
Oh, to the right one.
No, aquí.
So now you're gonna try to draw this
I'm
one.
thinking about the outside.
One on the right is up three.
Up three.
Should do multiply or do the plus first?
So what you had to do first? You had to,
Parentheses.
parenthesis is moving what?
After that.
You move one.
One to the right or left?
Right.
Right. And then you had to take the value, take the y value, take that y value, multiply by what? -2. And then take that value, same thing the value, add 3. So you just keep on doing same thing. So what happened here? 0, moving right 1 is what? Here?
Still zero, negative.
And then times -2 is still 0.
Yeah.
And move up 3. 1, 2, 3. How many of you guys are lost? Okay, so let me do it again. So let me write down the instruction. What is inside the parenthesis, right? Is move right 1, right? Derecha, right? Derecha? Right? Derecha? Derecha. Multiply. So multiply by -2. Up in Spanish is what?
Arriba.
Arriba. Arriba is faster, right?
No.
Faster is rápido.
Like about.
Oh. Okay, so go up 3. So I'm gonna follow the instruction. Okay, moving 1 right. Times by -2. 0 times -2 is what? 0. And then move up 3. So that my first quarter it went from here. Now this one you have to be careful. This one's moving what? Right 1. That's -2. So -2 times -2 is what? Positive 4. And then up 3. So it's gonna be all up 3 right here. Right? Now we're gonna do the same thing for this one. So this one's gonna get the same thing. So it's a moving right 1, and then multiply by -2. So it's gonna be this side, and then up 3 is gonna go up back to here.
Just back to the same place, except for just moving from right.
Okay, moving 1 right. So this place is gonna go moving right 1, multiply by -2, and then up 3. So this one's gonna be like this. And then that's where it goes to end. Okay, it's not too bad. Just follow the order.
Yeah, just remember.
Yeah. Order operations. Step by step.